Hi guys, I'm Ryan Nunes. I am the guest host today on the South Coast Artist Index 200th episode. That's a big deal. So I'm just going to help guide you guys in and talk to you. But the first question I have on my mind is, how did this get started?
Why don't you do it? Everybody already hears my version of it. I want to make sure I'm right.
Gee whiz, I don't remember the first conversation. But yeah, essentially it started with Ron wanting to put together some kind of an index of the local artists, so there'd be an archive of sorts for people to reference and find out information about different artists. I think it started with you with two things, with the article from Mary Jean, and then your quest to find some information about your mother and her fado singing. And so anyways, I was getting into web design and development at that time, so he's like, let's put something together. And that's when it came together.
Yeah. I don't know what prompted it, but I brought up we were just talking about this, that, and the other. It was just at the beginning of the Great Recession. And I said, it's weird. I've had this, it was an actual ad in, I have to ask Ralph Hickok about the year, because it was a Sunday supplement to the Standard Times, back when newspapers were newspapers. And she had there's a clipping is on our website if you check out our history. And she said, I think there was like nearly 200 people she was looking for, a birthday, anything. And as she later explained to me, in unfortunately a botched podcast, it was like really a great podcast, but we had some technical thing that we didn't know about until the end. But she said basically she would take those names, run them against the city directory in the genealogy room at the library. So if like Ryan Noon's name showed up living at 123 Union Street in the following years, you were legitimate. And if it said occupation artist, boom, you got in the book. And then she would try to find more about you, and that's how it started for her. So the next time I met with Jeff, I brought the newspaper clipping that I had cut out. And he's like, I think it's a really good idea. Let's do it. And we did. And things were going pretty good until business got better at Spectrum Marketing Group. It was in its infancy. And then, it was not a back burner, but it became a secondary thing because, running the agency was something. And that's how we got started.
Yeah, so we ran into some challenges doing the database, just the amount of time and research it would take, and then the development into the database. So at some point we said, why don't we pivot and just do podcasts for now? So instead of us having to put in the time to find all this information about people, put together, write it, edit it, all that stuff, we could just have them on and let them tell their story. So we kind of pivoted towards the podcast.
And I said, who's going to do the podcast? And he said, you are. And I said, why? He said, I can't do them. I said, well, I may have a face for radio, which is an old radio joke, but I certainly don't have the voice for it. And he said, doesn't matter. You're the only one who's going to do it. And our very first podcast was with Mike Pietragalla, who's a woodworker, master woodworker. And that was episode number 1. And we are technically we are over 200 because we have the jazz series. We have Gallery X that we dropped the first one. We have a couple of other series that are going to be coming on board. So we're not there yet, but we're getting close.
I think you're there. Word to the wise, I don't know if you guys know this. I edited the podcast. We're there. We're there. You guys have done amazing work. And that feedback from just listening to the other artists is pretty cool. Even from a person who hasn't been there since the beginning, it's interesting to see all these different artists come in here and talk about their lives and their journeys. As for you guys, because you're out there in the community and talking to these people, what is the general consensus of the podcast?
We always had... I always got feedback like, oh, yeah, we listen to it all the time. It's like, yeah, it's like, sure. But when Jeff came up with another brilliant idea that we're going to be doing the live stream podcasting from Play Arcade on AHA nights, I don't think he realized what he did, other than the fact that we were coming, we joined AHA, we're a member, so on and so forth. But we now have a public, physical face.
Yeah.
And people were meeting us and coming up to us and telling, oh, I've listened to every single one of them. And what's your feedback been like?
Same, yeah. Overwhelmingly positive, especially from the artist community itself, yeah. It was very, I'll say slow growing, organic in the early stages, but it seems everybody we come across now has at least heard of it, maybe been on it at least once, or knows somebody that has, so.
Oh, that's actually pretty good slogan. But the other thing too is I realized once, I think during one of my podcasts that I was hosting, and it kind of got me choked up, that I just took this as like, oh, got to do another podcast, and it became like, oh, I want to get this person. Oh, I want to get her. Oh, I want to get him. I want to, because we want to keep the diversity. We wanted to keep the uniqueness. We wanted to, we really wanted to show to the world outside the South Coast what a unique, creative community that we have and the talent that we have here. But I never realized that I felt like a priest in a way, like a father confessor, because I got to speak to these artists for at least an hour.
Yeah.
And listen and have these conversations. And people would ask me when I would invite them on the show, oh, what questions are you going to ask me? What are we going to be talking about? I said, I have the faintest idea. Yeah. It's not an interview. It's just a conversation. Mm. And if you say something, I'll just go off on that, on that thing till you say something else, and we'll come back and around. And some of the podcasts, I tell you the truth, when you could see the look on the hosts of the guest's face, like, oh, there's so much more to talk about. This is like the best conversation I've ever had. I'm like, wow, that is a privilege.
My name is Jeff Angeley, and I had the good fortune of working with the South Coast Artist Index podcast series back in 2023. As part of my work, I got the opportunity to document the music work of several important musicians in the greater New Bedford community, including a host of traditional and folk musicians, an area that I have some expertise and experience with as both a player and as a person who's collaborated with a lot of folks. It was invaluable work, as I see it, documenting the work of those really important artists, and additionally, it was really great for me. It was good work as far as being a job, in that it was really, really meaningful, and it provided an opportunity for me as a working and performing musician to get paid for meaningful work. I believe in what the Artist Index does, and I think that their continued mission to document the work of visual artists and performing artists and musicians in the greater South Coast is of value to all of us. And I do hope that your organization will be able to provide support for that project as it continues to provide benefit to all of us now and has the opportunity to for a long time into the future.
That's a privilege.
Yeah, you've had multiple repeat guests.
Yes, yeah. We have a loyal following. And just really quick, I've spoken to a lot of people, and there are three people I want to bring up. Dan Logan, who's a photographer. He was documenting the fishing fleet. I met him walking our dog Daisy out on the Hurricane Dike at the Seagate there in Fairhaven at Fort Phoenix. We just struck up conversation, became friends, invited him on the show. But he was also a writer, and he was supposed to come back to talk about his writing life. And some people are like a page in a book, some people are a chapter, some people are an entire volume, and some people are a complete set. We had the pandemic. We were released after, 6 months of isolation, whatever it was. And I see these legs sticking out of the Hurricane Deck. And I was like, that's an odd place for Dan to be. I mean, I've seen him like trying to get really good shots. And I said, Dan, what are you doing down there? And it was another photographer named Steve Kennedy. He said, do you know Dan? I said, yeah, I know Dan. I thought you were Dan. I just saw the button leg sticking out of the rocks there, right? He says, Dan passed away suddenly. He had terminal cancer. And it was undiagnosed, and boom! I mean, he had the diagnosis, and it's like, oh my God! And I thought to myself, well, there's two kinds of people that we want information on: the contemporary, which is a euphemism for living artists, living practicing artists, and the other one is historical, which is a euphemism for dead artists. And yeah, we have a great difficulty, and I don't mean that as a joke, getting the dead artists' information. Because I found out after all this time that there are people who know little bits about Grandpa or Aunt Susie or Billy, the guy who lived next door, but they're too embarrassed that they only have little snippets of information and they figure it's not worth coming forward. The second one was Don Hoagland, who was a master goldsmith and master silversmith. You don't meet two masters in one person. And we found we had a mutual friend, and there was this horrific event that occurred about somebody we wanted to memorialize because of what they accomplished in the history of the South Coast creative community, which was phenomenal. And we had a sidebar after the podcast, and unfortunately, within a couple of months, Dawn passed away. And then Kevin Jose, not Jose, he always used to say, I'm Haitian, not Hispanic. Kevin Jose, who worked here as a receptionist, he was a rapper. He went by the name Demph. He was killed in a motorcycle accident a couple of months back. So that really drove home how important this really is, because I haven't spoken to Dan Logan's family or to Don Hoagland's wife or to anybody from Kevin's family. But I'm really curious as to how they feel or felt about having their loved one on a podcast. Because I know my stepmother, I kept her outgoing message from the old-fashioned, what were those things? Answering machine, just to hear her voice over and over and over and over again. So anyway.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I did send a link to the podcast to Kevin's sister.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't been able to listen to it, but
yeah, I know it's tough. And speaking about the historical artists, we are going to be let's talk about the future a little bit. Going forward, we're working with the New Bedford Light.
Yep.
We are going to be launching a series, a collaborative series, which is going to be rather interesting. They're going to be reviewing our podcasts and helping us cast the net for information on those historical artists, and it's called The Lost Artists of the South Coast.
Okay.
For example, in my lifetime, my art instructors, Francisco Raposa, who was a phenomenal watercolorist. He was my high school art teacher and responsible for me getting into what was then SMU, which is now University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. My instructors there, Ed Tornieri, Herb Cummings, Bill Elliott, and Frank McCoy. They were all successful. They were teaching artists, faculty members of a university. They were selling artists as well, and yet they've passed. And point to me a place where I can go see their work. Point to me a place that I can go read about their lives. I think that's awful, because when you die, the African proverb, I've said this a bazillion times on these podcasts, the African proverb is you die twice. The first time is when you draw your last breath. The second time is when the last person who speaks your name draws their last breath. That's the driver. That's the driver.
I think that the most interesting part of art, especially when it comes to a physical form or film or anything, is in that moment we've captured the essence of whatever that artist is thinking. And if we can't even find that moment, did this artist ever really exist to an extent? And it's deep. It's hard to think that you've spent your whole life having this piece of work or these emotions. And I think it's wonderful that even we do the podcast, like we're hearing their voice. That's a moment in their life that they recorded here. and that's really special.
Yeah, I mean, so let's flip the tables and speak about your experiences when you're editing these things. I mean, it has its challenges. Editing always has its challenges. Somebody take a breath, please, so I can cut in and and splice this together better. But you've also had the honor of hearing all of these podcasts first before everybody else. If you were from another planet, another country, whatever, another dimension, and you only knew this community by what you heard on those podcasts, what would your assessment be of that?
I would say if I had to listen to I'm trying to think of like a specific one in particular, but in general, hearing over, I've been here for a little bit now, probably 20 episodes or more now of different things too. It's really cool because it's not, like I said, when you capture the art, it's just right in front of you. You're trying to figure out what they're thinking. It's cool to hear a podcast because you know what they're thinking, literally. And I like that because you never know what it's going to be. It could be a very personal conversation, like you said, or it could be just about art. And that's fine, too. If they want to just talk strictly about their art, that's fine. But if I really enjoy the podcasts when they start talking a little bit about their life, because you want to know the artist. You just don't want to know the art, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think it's a great program. And I think the only things that I tend to cut out are like,
the breaths,
but
and making it seamless. And thank you for your labors. That's for sure. Jen Signorella did it before you, and she's is a very quiet, reserved person, but she's such she enjoyed listening, editing some of those podcasts. We're also very fortunate, because we've been able to be grant funded. Jeff and I don't make a dime off of this. In fact, Jeff, it comes out of his pocket. And theoretically, so it did for me too, for apps and for, all kinds of things. And, but that's not the point. We were able to get grant money, and we brought on Scott Bishop and Jeff Angeley. They were the first two of not me podcasters, and they did a phenomenal job. And then I met Dave Reis, or the joke between us, because he's Cape Verdean, and I met him. And it's not Reis, no, it's Reis, but nobody can say Reis. So anyway, I met him at a book signing for Anthony Barboza, who was a world-class photographer. And iconic photographs as well. And he is a walking, talking encyclopedia of jazz, because he grew up in a household where all these black jazz artists came to stay overnight with his family, because although they were allowed to play these venues in these clubs and stuff, they were themselves not allowed to have dinner at those places or stay at a hotel. So there's a whole nother vibe that's there. And again, we're actually documenting Dave, documenting everybody else, right? And our latest one that we've brought online is Sean FitzGerald, who's a former, actually Sean and Scott are both former radio guys. And Sean is documenting, it just so happens his wife Christine is doing all the scanning of 35 years worth of Gallery X documents. We won a ArtNet award, Art is Everywhere award, to scan those documents and put them into a database, which will go. I'm writing up a grant now for the second phase for that index to put all that information in, and not because it's us, the three of us here, and the three of them that I just mentioned. Yeah. Did I miss anybody? Scott, Dave, Jeff.
Scott, Dave, Jeff, Sean.
Sean, yeah, Sean, yeah. So
your new guest host there, Max, from the other night.
Oh yeah, Max. Max. Actually, Max. I just had breakfast with him this morning. I'm going to. He wrote me some messages about some ideas, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I'd love to have him on a podcast, but not now. I want him to write articles as our man on the street. Yeah. Because he's going to fill a niche that I didn't know how to fill. Mm-hmm. He's very, very inquisitive, and there's things that we can put in articles that can be done faster. And because he also has a good radio presence, a voice presence, we can go back into those articles and focus on specific aspects of those articles and blow them up, as they say. So we're really, really lucky. And I'm going to be honest with you. We really need to get podcasters of a different gender. It's only because the DEI thing for us has always been important, that we didn't want to exclude anyone.
I'm sure there will be a 300th episode in no time, especially with the amount of people that we bring in here all the time. And you guys have done an absolutely wonderful job of catering to that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to say before this segment ends?
You have anything, Jeff? I'm not going to bail you out again. We like yin and yang.
Yeah, I mean, we touch one more thing on the future, because you talked about some of the future aspects, but one of the other things that we would really like to focus on going forward is recording live events as well.
Got you.
Yeah, performances, musical, theater, poetry, you name it, and documenting those as well. So hopefully that will be part of the next phase. We'll see.
Right. We also have a Fairhaven series starting that Scott Bishop is going to be doing. It's just a mixture of Fairhaven artists, period. And he's going to kick it off with Maggie Kerr Peirce, who was the grand dame of the folk music around here, was involved with one of my old instructors, Howard Glasser, for the Steffids and the Kayleys at SMU. Rubbed elbows with all the great folk artists of the time, and she was one. We're going to we're applying for a grant for a softcover publication. We hope I'm looking to do a biennial. I figured out the metrics on it. It's going to be at least a 250-page book for the first one. It's called The First 50. So the first 50 podcasts that we've done will be transcribed, and I won't go into all the details, but you'll be able to find those people there with QR codes to bounce back to their podcasts. So there's a lot of cross-referencing, which is great. And then hopefully in 2 more years, we'll do the second 50, the third 50, all the way on up. So in 8 years' time, we'll have done all these 200. And then the index itself, which we sort of tiptoed over, that was, that's why it's called the Artist Index. The index is this database, searchable database. We're going to continue the tradition of Mary Jean Blasdale. We have the 200 names to put in there and more, and other names that have public record now through obituaries and such. And the Gallery X is going to help be the fertilizer or the seed stock for that. And I think that pretty much rounds us all off and brings us into the, back to the future, so to speak.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming by today, and I want to thank your service to the arts and the community. So,
thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
No problem. Hey, Sean.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, welcome to episode 200.
Wow.
Of the South Coast Artists Index.
Thank you so much, man.
I'm really glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
And I guess I just want to talk about your experience with the South Coast Index and just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Ryan. I'm honored to be here. Honored to be a part of the South Coast Artist Index. I was brought to it as a fan, like a lot of people. Thankfully, my wife, Christine Mayato FitzGerald, who is an artist in the area, has her own art gallery, Mayato Fitz Art Gallery and Studio. She became friendly with Ron through her schoolwork a few years back when she was still going to school at BCC as a fine arts major. I'm not sure if Ron was one of her professors. I don't think but I know he teaches or taught at UMass Dartmouth.
Yeah.
But but I'm not sure if he actually instructed her or if she met him through an instructor. But long story short, she met Ron, and they collaborated on a few projects. And her day job, she has mad secretarial skills.
Okay.
So Ron tapped her to do some transcribing for some of these podcasts, actually.
All right.
Yeah, he's got them recorded, but he wants the actual literal, book in hand version if people want to read it.
Yeah.
So that's what she started to do about, I'd say maybe 2 years ago. She started doing that, transcribing them. And then he began these podcasts here at the South Coast Artists Index, and he got in touch with her when he got the grant for the Gallery X documentation project.
Okay.
Got in touch with her to have her go to Gallery X, gather all the media resources, marketing materials. They had posters, newspaper articles, all saved in boxes each year for the last 35 years that Gallery X has been in existence. So he had her go down there, get those, and slowly but surely, she's been doing this now for the last, I think, 3 months, scanning all of those articles, the flyers. Some of them are so cool. They're like the original hand-drawn, like,
oh, wow, that's beautiful.
with the Sharpie markers, like really old school, long before people even thought about doing it on computers. So she started doing that. I think it was at the end of last year she began doing that for him. And we got to know each other too. I'd gone to a couple of his art shows. He's a wonderful painter as well,
course,
And we got talking, and somehow I mentioned that he knew I was a performer. I sing locally in a few bands, and currently for the NB Rude Boys, a ska reggae rock steady band. If you ever want to check us out, we'll get to that later, I guess.
Yes.
So yeah, he tapped me for. I mentioned I'd done some DJing and some MCing, and he tapped me for hosting a podcast here, actually documenting how Gallery X was formed, and I was honored. I've been a fan. I'd listened to some of the podcasts already, and it was exciting to get my hands on this assignment, if you will, because I'm a member of Gallery X. I have been for almost 10 years now. I was the president briefly back in 2022. Then I stepped away for personal reasons, and I came back. I remained a member, but I came back in more of an administrative role last year as the development director.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so when Ron called me and asked me to participate in this, I was like, well, great. I mean, it's almost like my second home. Gallery X it's a home to a lot of artists out there, and the opportunity to sit down with people who began this gallery and really see what was the genesis behind it was thrilling for me to take hold of. And that's pretty much what brought me to this room, this table, this conversation.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that being a part of this podcast, have you ever been recognized by somebody in the community or in the outside in the city?
I have, actually, yeah. A couple of people, they know me through the band and through performing. But somebody, I was talking at Gallery X recently, and there was an older lady who, after I got done speaking, it was a members meeting, she came up to me and she's like, I thought I knew you, but I didn't recognize you. But when you spoke, that's what it was. And she's like, hey, you're the host for the podcast, South Coast Artists. I said, yes, I am. So that was pretty cool. She's a member. They're excited over there about this project because, like myself, many members have no clue, what Gallery X started as, why they even began it. So it was exciting to hear that from her, and just gave me a little reaffirmation that this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. It's very cool. You're all very laid back, and you're very flexible, and
we try to be.
Yeah. You have to deal with artists who can be temperamental, maybe, right? I'm glad you guys finally had the rider set. You removed all of the green M&Ms from the
yes.
Those key as well.
We do the best for you.
Thank you. It's a Van Halen little tidbit in my anyway, but
hi, my name's Dan Kooning. I'm a graduate of the Swain School of Design, UC Berkeley, and along with my wife own a company called Heavenly Spirits. We think that the Artist Index is doing great work for the creatives in the South Coast. And for that reason, we support them, and we hope you do too.
So we've actually recorded some of your performances.
Oh, yes.
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 And awesome. Could you just tell me a little bit about those?
Yeah, the band, we're a ska, reggae, rocksteady band. We do covers as well as originals, and some of the covers that we do, if people aren't familiar with ska or reggae, ska is pretty much reggae with horns and some punk influences. It's like reggae on steroids.
Okay.
So we began 7 years ago now.
Wow.
In June. Yeah, it'll be 7 years ago. And we opened up for the legendary Scotalites band. They've been doing it for about 40 years, internationally. Wow. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. That was the first gig. And kind of really took to that. I've always been a fan of reggae, and always been a fan of performing, and some of the artists that we cover, like Bob Marley, Sublime, who else? Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, early Clash, early Police. Yeah. And when you start out as a band, you're doing covers, and if you gel, then you start writing on your own. And we've been doing that for about the last 4 years, writing on our own actively, and recorded our first EP last year, which is called Welcome to Rude Bedford by the NB Rude Boys, and just recorded another EP, released a few songs off that one as well. So doing this podcast, chatting with you fellas and Paula and so forth, you guys approached me about wanting to start recording some live music in the area, and I was honored that you asked me, to do it. I think it was the first time you guys came out and, sent out a crew. You guys sent out 3 camera people. It was a great event. It was actually our Summer Vibes event at Cisco. We had a number of bands, Sunshine Melodies, the Rins, Bim Scala Bim, legendary Bim Scala Bim, and of course the NB Rude Boys. And you guys were there recording us. You recorded our 4 originals, Jimmy Johnson, Duck and Cover, High and Tight, and I forget what the 4th one was that you recorded.
I should know. I edited it.
Yeah, I know. I should know. I should know I was there and I sang it. But, well, we're not going to tell you. You're going to have to tune in and see it for yourself. So.
You're going to have to check it out.
Right. Yes. You're going to have to check it out. So that was cool that you guys did that, because especially that you guys specified you wanted original music.
Yes.
And for me and for a lot of artists musically out there, and just artists, painters, photographers, you name it, original music, original art, original work is where it's at. It's, where you kind of, what really gives you your satisfaction, it's cool to learn by playing other people's stuff, but you can't keep doing that, you're just in this, there's no creativity, there's no growth that way. Yeah. So it was cool that you guys approached us and wanted to record our original music, because now we have videos for the original songs that, and you did a great job too. I understand you were the video editor.
Yes.
You spliced it all together.
I did.
Outstanding work, because the last 2 songs that we did, I think it was raining.
Yes.
And you guys only had like one camera going, I think. Or
yes.
One stationary, and
it's Tim and Sean.
That's right. I remember Sean. Yeah. Sean yes. was the older guy that I think was kind of...
Sean is he's professional.
Professional.
Just locked in.
Yeah.
Tim is a great guy. He's professional too, but he goes with the flow.
Yeah.
So you got 2 different personalities working on a team.
Yeah.
So
when I met him, I was like, oh, Sean too. And so that's why he stood out. But I remember him saying to me, it's like it was 5 years ago, right? It was only in July.
Yeah.
I remember saying, like, you mind if I really kind of like to really get into the vibe of the band? You know? So I don't want to obscure you. Do you mind if I get, like, maybe on the stage? I'm like, oh, yeah, man. I mean, come on up. So, yeah, he was behind us, doing some shots on the stage.
Yeah.
And, because you edited
I loved
together.
those shots.
I mean, you did a great job, too, because you were careful to make sure he wasn't in any, because you guys had that one camera from straight out back, I think, right?
Yeah,
Just
it was like a wide shot.
like a wide shot of
yeah.
the stage, yeah. So that was really cool. Getting a little off track here, maybe. Am I?
No, it's you're allowed to.
I'm allowed
Yeah.
to ramble.
I mean, it's still part of us.
Okay.
You know, so
All right. So
ska never dies.
ska never dies.
Yes.
And it goes on. And so we're doing that. So as far as for me, and I do that. You guys approached me as far as the band performing. That was great. It's been up since July. We've got a lot of good responses from that too. Thank you guys so much for doing that.
Good.
We've included it as far as in our promo pack for some of the links, because a lot of the places that we play out of the area, they want original music.
Yeah, that's good though.
And like the national bands that we're opening up for, they're playing their own music, so they don't want a cover band getting up there and playing, Tom Petty or no, Tom Petty. I love Tom Petty, but you understand what I mean. So yeah, that's coming very handy for us.
Can you see yourself continuing hanging out with us?
Oh yeah,
for a few more years.
Oh yeah,
at least just.
Oh yeah, you're probably gonna have to have me removed.
Oh,
Which,
yes.
I was gonna get to that, but it would become self-evident really eventually. It'd be like, he's the guest that wouldn't leave. I really because my background, I was an intern at WUSM. Back when UMass Dartmouth was SMU, and the radio station was WUSM, the Alternative's Alternative. I interned for a while, ended up filling in for a few DJs. I never got my own show because I was performing a lot too back then with my band and school and work. But I love doing it, and I love conversation. It's something that is definitely going by the wayside. Like each day you go out there and people don't really communicate that much anymore. No. It's how are you, good, or if that even. And, you see it with the older generation. My mom, used to drive me crazy. She'd want to talk to everyone, but it's what connects us.
Of course.
Doing this for me, it's been exciting because I'm peeling back the layers of history, literally like I'm a cyber archaeologist almost when I do this, like a cyber archaeologist maybe. Cyber archaeologist, John FitzGerald, cyber archaeologist. And it's cool that, I'm learning. That's the other thing I'm learning as I'm sitting here with these people.
Yeah.
Some of them I know very well, I've worked with, and some of them I don't really know. And I sit here and I'm like, oh, cool, so that's why you guys did that. And it gives it relevance, too, to the whole project I've been involved in over there as president and development director and member. And, so I definitely would, I'd love to stay on board in whatever capacity you guys would have me. And, in this city, too, in this area, there's just so much for the senses, music, visually. The restaurants around here are just phenomenal. And,
absolutely.
I talked with Ron we've talked music, and he's like to maybe document the history of New Bedford's rock scene. And,
that'd be amazing.
Yeah, it'd be and it's a really thriving scene even now. So the future looks bright, and I'd love to be a part of whatever you guys have. It's a great place to be, and it's a great way to stay in shape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for coming by.
Sure, man.
Thank you for being a part of this journey in this community.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
And Sean FitzGerald, the living legend himself.
Thank you, Ryan, for having me, and thank you, South Coast Artists Index and Ron Fortia, and my mom, and everybody else.
All right.
All right, man. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it, brother.
Welcome to episode 200. I'm your host, Ryan, and of course, it's nice to see you, David.
Same here. Thanks for including me.
David Reis, the jazz legend himself.
I know. That's what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my passion. No, I just grew up in it,
Yeah.
I was surrounded as a little kid of musicians in the house and their friends. And in those days, when I was a kid, it wasn't even TV. So it was the record players and the radio.
Yeah.
So that was your entertainment.
Yeah. You've brought that knowledge and that experience to the South Coast Artists Index. How long do you think you've been with us?
I got on summer before last, I believe. I met Ron at an event, and he said, "Hi, I'm Ron Ford." I said, "I'm Dave Reis." He says, "I've been looking for you." So he had me in for a podcast, and then after that, had me come back as a host.
Yeah. And how's that feel?
Good, because I like getting that information out, because there's hardly anyone, around that knows the jazzy, how it was when it started, when it was here, especially here in New Bedford. We had such great jazz musicians. Went on to fame orchestras and bands from New Bedford, and we have a lot of famous musicians that went from New Bedford. Boston used to come here to play it. Yeah, so there's a big history in this. I just want to leave that behind, so people would know, because it's, like I say, from my time, there's very few guys I did jazz with and hung out with. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you every podcast that I've edited for you, specifically, you always have like a huge plethora of knowledge, and it's always kind of comforting because you have a very genuine way of telling history. Because you're not just telling stories, you're telling experiences.
That's what I want to get out. Not my experience I want to get out. I want to get out the experience that these guys went through. The jazz, what they had to go through, with the era of segregation. They were on the road, they couldn't find hotels to sleep in, they sleep in the bus, couldn't find restaurants to eat in. And in fact, some events, or the places where they played, they couldn't even socialize. They came in the kitchen door and people couldn't buy them drinks. Those are the things I want people to know, what they went through to give us this great art that we have. They give it to the world, because in Europe it's still big. Jazz is still big in Europe. That's what I want to get out there. Their history, that they're not just great trumpet players or sax players. What they had to go through to do what they did.
They dealt with real issues and real problems, and I think history in general loves to do this thing where we try to remember the good things.
Right.
We try to ignore the bad things.
Right.
And I know every single podcast is a new story, a new experience. That I really enjoy. So.
Yeah, I have a great memory. It's not only about sports and anything, but the thing is, it was around me all the time. As a kid, my uncles were babysitters, they were musicians. So I was a little kid, I was with them and all. So I absorbed all that, and I have that memory. And then I got to know them as an adult and saw what they went through. Yeah.
Man, that's always a weird feeling, right? When you get older, you start understanding. You're like, oh,
Yeah, that's true.
I was gonna say, you've also been a DJ before, right?
I was 26 years with UMass Dartmouth.
Wow.
Yeah. Till they closed. They closed the station. They sold the station. Yeah.
I remember once, I believe it was in the podcast, or maybe you said it to me outside of here. You said a woman used to listen to you all the time, and she'd call the station, and you had to break the news to her. What was that like?
Well, that was the bad part. Was things, not only just one person, her especially, but I had a couple. I had one guy every Wednesday. He'd be looking forward to. He was laying in his bed. He'd be sitting, and that's another thing I learned. Like I'm saying about the musicians, I learned about radio. I thought you just going on the radio played music, but it meant a lot to so many people.
Yeah,
that's what I felt bad for them. Those people that what are they going to do now?
Yeah,
and especially with jazz, there's not many jazz programs. It wasn't like they could go somewhere else.
Yeah. It's like a friend kind of talking to you at times.
Exactly.
Your voice definitely has that warm energy.
Thank you. It's funny you say that, like a friend. They'd call me, other old musicians, while I'm on the radio, and we'd be talking, and I'd say, I'm on the radio. So I ended up giving them my phone numbers, and we'd have conversations at home. And I enjoyed it because I enjoyed talking about jazz.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do it with a CD running out, So I gave them my phone numbers. And that. So that's what I felt bad was for them.
So, do you think you want to stick around with us for the South Coast Artists Index?
As long as I've got something to put out, get out. I'd glad to do it. This has been my passion. This is what jazz and the jazz artists. Yeah. Anything that I can give out there, let people know, I'd be glad to.
Yeah. And is there anything any future projects that you'd want to do? Is there something you want to do on the podcast?
Well, basically what I've been doing is trying to, as you saw a few of the podcasts, one guy, John Harrison and Rick Rabati, find the musicians that were from around that era that still are, and get them on and let them, I don't want to do the talking on my podcast. I want to ask them a question and let them go and give that out to the people. That's what I want to do. As long as there's anything, anybody I can find that wants to come on or that's used to this situation of talking about jazz. You get a bunch, 4 or 5 guys that are jazz fans, get them together, they go on for hours. And that's what I want my podcast to be like. Let the guys talking like we said. In fact, John Harrison and I did that in his house. Yeah. Just sit around and talk. Let them give us the information.
Yeah. There's only, so much I feel like as a person, like we can talk all we want, but there's nothing better than listening to someone and absorbing that information.
Yeah, someone that experienced it. Yes.
Hi there, it's Scott Bishop, your friendly neighborhood scapegoat and Artists Index contributor for nearly 3 years now. Woo! Congratulations on episode number 200. It's hard to believe the Artists Index is only 6 years old and has put out so many episodes. Let's do 200 more. But maybe not all this year. I mean, that would be a lot. But I've had a blast contributing to the Artists Index. When I started 3 years ago, I was only going to talk to musicians. But thanks to the Index, I've talked to writers, filmmakers, teachers, and in every conversation, I learn a lot about the people I'm talking to and about different approaches to creativity. A great example, my first podcast was a conversation with my friend, singer-songwriter Sarah Donner. And at the time, Sarah also had a synth pop side project, and I asked her how she approached writing songs for that project. And she said, I write those songs on acoustic guitar, just like my other songs. And you hear synth pop, and you assume, or at least I do, that someone is composing this stuff on a keyboard or on their laptop. It was a good way to have my assumptions knocked down, because it taught me not to ask a question from an assumption, but to just ask it out of curiosity. Among the many things the Artists Index does is it gives us a sense of the wealth of talent, the breadth and depth of that talent in the South Coast. And it gives that talent a chance to talk about what they do, how they work, and to do it in depth in a way that most platforms don't allow. So once again, congratulations to the Artists Index and my friend, its founder, Ron Fortier, on episode number 200. Now, if you excuse me, I need to find some artists who want to talk about their work.
So when we think about New Bedford as a city, historically, what's the thing you miss the most about the jazz scene?
Well, this is what I miss about, like the era I'm talking about. Up until maybe 10 years ago, there still are. But there was so much jazz here. You were on a night, and so-and-so was playing here, another guy's playing down the bar, down the corner. And should I go see him, or you get one set and then you run out and go catch your set? That's what I miss. Now I don't find anything. In fact, there were jazz places with jazz like Piccadilly downtown, 7 nights a week.
Wow.
And the band would come in. They would bring bands from out of New York and everything, and they would come in on a Monday, and they were there till Sunday night. So any night you could go. Now I can't even go once a month. In fact, the most jazz I've been going to is like Providence. I was in Woonsocket. Greg Abate, who I had on podcast, the last podcast, I went to see him. There's nothing here.
Do you think jazz will ever come back to this area?
Like I said, it's not just this area. It's period. I don't think so. Not like that with Williamson, because you have musicians now. You have fellas go to Berkeley or school of music and all, and they go out and then they get jobs or teachers. And in that era, these guys, this was their jobs. They made their living playing in these bars and all. So when seemed to be lost, jazz seemed to be lost, the guys weren't playing anymore, so you don't have musicians. So an older guy, a tenor player, would be playing, and a guy come in 20, and with his sax, he'd help him play. So he would learn from him, and then he'd be our next artist, next. So you don't have that, There's nothing flourishing from the old guys.
So no, you feel like there's not a sense of guidance anymore, since it kind of...
No, I can't see it coming back the way it is now. Yeah.
We're going to have to open a jazz.
Yeah, jazz is improvisation, and there's no improvisation anymore. You know, the guys are going to school, they learning music,
Yep.
and then they get into the music industry, and wherever they can make money, which is what they're supposed to do. That's what they
Yeah.
want. If you're going to sit around, hang around, waiting to play jazz and not make any money, you know. So yeah.
Well, I mean, if I ever win the lottery,
Yeah.
I'll make a club.
Yeah.
I'll call it
Yeah.
Reese's Place. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
yeah. See, that's why it won't grow now, because they had 7 nights a week, and a young guy would come in. I want to be a bass player. I want to be a piano player. He'd see that, and he said, "You don't see that anymore. You know, you're not walking in any bar and seeing that." Yeah.
It's a different mentality.
Exactly.
When it comes to a lot of things now.
A lot of things. Yeah.
Even the way people compose music is
Yep.
greatly different.
Exactly.
And how we record it too, and things like that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
you know, it
Yeah.
is a loss.
Yeah, and that's an example right there, what you just said, where people record music. In those days, they're learning it, they're studying it, but in those days, they learned on the stage. You know, young guys started playing piano.
Yep.
He'd come in, they let him get up there, they call it jam sessions, and he was learning there, you know.
Wow.
And that's how, there was no Berkeley in my time.
Yeah.
When I was young, there was no Berkeley School of Music or anything. They learned on the job.
Yeah.
They took music lessons, and then they got together and learned how to play jazz. Yeah, music lessons weren't jazz; they were music lessons.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's completely different.
So-
They would never let them do that.
No, so that's the reason why I say it won't go back to that. Yeah, and you know what's funny? It'd be funny in a way, because I'd go in and say, Manny Rose is playing in this club, so I go see Manny Rose, and then another musician come in. They would always invite them, you know, and you
Yeah.
see some of them, you get all excited. Oh, look who's here! He's going to get up and play.
Yeah.
Then sometimes the guy comes and say, "Oh, look who's here!" But they'd invite everybody out, you know,
Yeah.
and some guys couldn't
It's a
keep
li-
up to them, but they let them play. You know? And then some of them learned that way.
Yeah.
They couldn't keep up to them, but they caught up after a while.
Don't want to
Yeah.
crush their confidence.
Right,
You got to encourage them to learn. Yeah.
And that's what's missing now. So
Yeah.
there's no on-the-job training at all.
I know that it kind of reminds me of like comedians when they start
Right.
not doing that well. They
Yeah.
instantly just get kind of
Yeah.
tossed off stage. It's not their fault. They're
Right.
learning their craft.
Right.
But
Yeah.
sometimes, it's people don't have patience.
Yeah. Terry Gibbs. And he's 100 years old. And Wayland City Sound just let out a CD, The Lost Tapes or something like it's called. They found some music of his, and he's 100, still active, not playing.
Yeah.
But and then he found some music that had been put out. So Neil's put it out on Wayland City Sound, and we're trying to find a way. Maybe we can do Zoom or something with him on the phone.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, Neil's working on that.
Yeah.
100 years old, and he was one of the first vibe players in jazz.
Really?
And he had a great orchestra. He had a quartet that he used to travel with, but he also had a big orchestra. They played in the West Coast, so hopefully get that on here. Yeah.
I mean, it's
We're
just
getting
a
ready
click
to-
away, kind of.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
He is
yeah.
100, so
Yeah.
we gotta
Exactly.
get it. We gotta get it
Yeah,
soon.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and it's amazing. They found this music that hadn't been recorded, and his son is a drummer,
Yep.
and he's on Neil's label on Wayland City Sound, and so through his son, Neil found that out, and so it just came out.
I'll
The Lost
definitely-
Tapes, I think it is. Yeah,
I'll definitely check that out.
yeah.
Can you buy it or?
Yeah, it's out for sale.
Oh, wow.
It's for sale. Just came out. It just came out. In fact, if you're on the computer, you'll see it. Put in Terry Gibbs, and you'll
Yeah.
see thing about it, and you'll see it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's as always. It is a pleasure to
Yeah,
see
same
you.
here.
And
Same here.
I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining me.
No problem. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for keeping this jazz alive.
Yes, we need to. Right.
Help keep it alive. Yeah.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.